Aloha and welcome to another episode of Hawaii Farmer Series. Happy 2016. We have a special double header of episodes today to bring in the new year. I am your co-host, Justine Espiritu. My lovely co-host is Matthew Johnson. And to just kind of remind you what this series is about, we want to kind of get to know the folks that are involved in our local food system and everyone that includes. That means farmers, that means distributors, that means community organizations that are focusing on building a resilient and sustainable food system. So we like to bring those folks on, hear their background, what motivates them to do this work and why they love it, and what we kind of are planning and thinking of for the future of local food in Hawaii. So thank you for joining us. If you have questions or comments, please engage with us on Twitter at ThinkTechHi.
Great, thanks Justine. So today we're going to be talking about the North Shore Land Trust, so combining conservation and agriculture. So our two guests today from the North Shore Land Trust, we have with us Nick Farrant, and we also have Tim Tybuszewski, both from North Shore Land Trust. Going to be talking about not only the nonprofit that they work for, but also for a recent food summit that happened up on the North Shore, coordinated by the Land Trust. So welcome guys, thanks for joining us, coming all the way down from the North Shore. Appreciate you guys coming into town.
Yeah.
And why don't you guys just go ahead and get us started, maybe give a little background on North Shore Land Trust. When did the organization start and what is the mission?
Sure. Organization started in '97 as a group of community members just kind of all volunteering their time. The focus of the mission at the time was kind of the Pupuke property, which is behind Sunside Beach. It's about 1,200 acres of coastal bluff behind the Sunside Beach Elementary School. There was a large development potentially happening, residential development up in the bluffs up there, and the community members were trying to find a solution to try to find a way to prevent that development. And they came across the idea of organizing and forming a land trust to help kind of communicate with the landowners and try to find some solutions to versus just always fighting in the courts or through the media. So trying to find kind of that balance of being able to actually work with the landowner and trying to find a solution for everybody. So that's kind of how the organization started, and so focused for the first few years on that particular property, and then had the success and were able to conserve it. Now it's currently a state park with lots of great hiking trails and
Cool.
mountain biking trails and jogging. So really great place to spend a day up there and take the family up for some great hikes. But then after that, the organization kind of expanded to decide, to go kind of throughout the North Shore. So our mission area is actually North Shore, so you can think of Kana Point to Kahuku, and then kind of all the way back to Wahiawa. So if you kind of think of Oahu as a piece of pie, that's kind of the slice of pie that we focus on. So now we've, since '97, we've been kind of trying to find ways to preserve a lot of the landscapes that the community members find are important to them. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how we started up.
Cool. Can one of you guys explain, you said land trust, and that's obviously a big part of what you guys are. Maybe some people aren't real familiar with that term. How do you define a land trust?
Well, I guess the easiest way to think of it is it's an organization that tries to find solutions to prevent overdevelopment of an area. Land trusts usually deal with a lot of real estate kind of transaction related stuff. So sometimes land trusts will buy a property outright and then they own it and then they preserve it in that sense. Sometimes the land trust will put what's called a conservation easement over a piece of property. So they don't necessarily own the property. The original owner could potentially still buy it or still own it, or another third party that chooses to come in and own it. So for instance, with the Pupuke property that I mentioned, there was a Japanese corporation that owned it that was trying to develop it, and now the state park owns it. But there's also a conservation easement over that property to prevent further development in perpetuity. So a conservation easement, kind of in a real simple way, is like buying away the development rights on the deed of a property. Yeah. So no matter how many people own it in the future, that restriction is always going to be on that piece of property. So and each one is unique. Each transaction is unique because it's basically kind of the lawyers of the landowner and the land trust get together and say, what works for everybody. And so maybe it's an piece of ag land and they still want to have the capability of building a new barn at some point. So maybe that'll put in their language where X amount of square feet of the property is still able to be developed on for various reasons, but it's got so every property is kind of specific in that way. But that's kind of the main focus of most land trusts, and there are land trusts throughout the United States. It's been around for quite a while. We have a few land trusts here in Hawaii besides us that also do great work. So that's kind of in a nutshell what a land trust would generally do. But our focus is not just on the preservation of land, but also making sure that people get to enjoy that land. So we do a lot of restoration work on our properties, or find ways for the community, however the community sees fit, of utilizing that property that has been preserved.
Right.
So do you guys work with the lawyers and developers as well, and then have a community aspect of kind of community engagement and getting their input and perspective?
Yeah, I think that comes first. The community engagement kind of comes first, of like, hey, what areas do you feel are important to you, and why do you feel they're important? What are the values that you see? So if it's a coastal, if it's a shoreline piece of property, maybe it's important because of the natural ecosystem that's there and how it needs to stay intact and nothing. Or if it's ag land, it needs to stay in ag. Or so, to kind of reach out to the community first and get a lot of input of what they feel important. We did that through a green printing process a few years back. We worked with Trust for Public Land to kind of put together a GIS-based mapping system that basically takes all the community input. We had like a few kind of one-day seminars where we got the community members to come in and say, with all these maps, and say, we want to, these various things are important to us for land preservation purposes. Maybe it's coastal view plains, or it's for less development, or it's for recreational purposes, or whatever the case may be. And we kind of take all that information and kind of consolidate it into the maps and find all the different pieces of property that kind of line up with all those important elements the community feel are worthy of being preserved. And then through that, we now know kind of, okay, the community wants this property, that property to be conserved, and for this or that reason. Mm-hmm. So with that information, we can then go in and deal with our lawyers, deal with their lawyers, and work out a resolution that the community would be happy with, first and foremost, but then also that the landowner can agree to, so that we can actually preserve it. So that's kind of how it.
That's awesome. So you guys kind of filled that role of the liaison between these developers and the community, that maybe there's really no legal obligation they have to kind of consult with the community necessarily when they want to develop. You guys kind of decided that was important and kind of established yourself to make sure that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason communities in the name of our land trust is North Shore Community Land Trust, because we really feel it's vital that we're not preserving land just for the sake of preserving land. It's really for the importance of what the community feels is important to the area. The North Shore community has had a long history of fighting for the rights to make sure that their voices are heard, and we want to continue that, make sure that continues today. Yeah.
What give us an example? What's a current project or site, a new site that you guys are potentially looking at?
Well, I can talk about some recent successes, such as the Turtle Bay Mackay property. As far as future, I can be a little more general as far as future properties. We're looking at a lot of ag-related property right now because we know that's really important for a lot of people. The North Shore has, a lot of acres of agriculture within its boundaries, and a lot of it's sitting fallow, and a lot of it's for sale. So that's kind of our main, I think, one of our main focuses right now. We never completely narrow into it, because we're always open to, really the way we have it, the properties come into our fold is basically community members express concern, and then we try to pursue, in their interest of, preserving a land. So, that could be ag today, and it could be, a piece of property that's on the coastline tomorrow, so you just never really know. But right now, I'd say our main focus is probably, just with the potential of properties that are kind of in the mix right now, is probably more agricultural related than anything else.
Cool. Which is awesome, and why we have you guys on the show today to talk about one of your newer initiatives. And so just to bring it to Nick for a second, so you have been kind of the project coordinator for the Food Summit. Was that how you entered into the organization? Could you kind of talk about what interested you in the organization and your placement in it?
So I was born and raised on the North Shore in Palmaloo, or Sunset Beach area. Just growing up in that beautiful location and kind of absorbing that lifestyle, I came to have a deep appreciation for the rural community. As I grew older, I also learned more about other values of the area, including the agricultural value of rural communities for our increasingly food-dependent island. So I think just the combination of my, love and passion for my home community, and also realizing the deeper implications that it has for our island and our state, got me interested in getting involved with organizations like the North Shore Community Land Trust. So about a year and a half ago, I was fortunate to start working part-time with the North Shore Community Land Trust, basically just doing whatever was needed of me as a young person, kind of an intern, and kind of gaining more and more responsibility over the years, and getting to take more of a leadership role and helping to plan this third annual North Shore Food Summit this past year.
So can you give us a little more background on what is the North Shore Food Summit? So you said it happened this is the third time you've
Yeah,
had
so this past October was the third annual North Shore Food Summit. Every year we basically gather together a diverse array of stakeholders from the North Shore community and the broader Hawaii community, including farmers, restaurant owners, food distributors, just general community members that are interested in purchasing local food.
So really your
investors,
target market is like anyone on the island?
Pretty much anyone. It's kind of a North Shore focus, but again, we recognize that the North Shore food system is such an important area for agriculture for the entire island. So really it's a pretty wide audience. Anybody who's interested to come is welcome to come. But there are key stakeholders, large landowners and investors and farmers and people that we do try to reach out to and make sure are there.
How easy has it been to involve those kind of really crucial stakeholders that, are the kind of the audience you want to have for bringing all these folks together? I mean, were they just stoked to come to this summit, or did you guys already have a reputation of kind of being a credible organization that they were happy to come and be a part of it?
I'd say so. We've been fortunate to have strong participation from all of the major landowners and farmers and people in the North Shore. So I think over the years we've gained somewhat of a reputation of having a good event that just brings together a really unique group of people and around a unique issue. So I think. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. No, Nick definitely hit it on the head. Although it's called the North Shore Food Summit, it's definitely not intended to be only for people, the community of the North Shore. Both our panelists and our guests and our just participants come from not only just from Oahu, but throughout the state of Hawaii.
Okay.
We do our field trips and whatnot are focused on the field North Shore related farmers or North Shore related happenings, but that's really the only part of it that's specifically North Shore. The rest of it's really, kind of open. Anybody that's interested in the local food movement would definitely get a lot out of coming to the event, for sure.
Cool. Do you want to kind of break down the agenda, or like the format of it? Because it's kind of unique, I think, for a conference.
Well, I'll let Nick kind of go about this past year, and then I can kind of touch on the previous years.
Okay, cool, yeah.
So, yeah.
It's kind of evolved over the years, starting out with just a one-day event with panel discussions, and kind of based on our feedback from that year, people wanted to see some field trips. So the second year we added a second day of field trips and also a youth summit component, which Tim can touch more on in detail after. But this year we always look at our feedback and what people liked and didn't like or thought could have been improved. So this year, through our meetings and planning process, we we decided that we'd continue the 2-year event and continue the field trips, but have a more interactive approach where it's not so much based on just panel discussions, but really a dialogue between community members, farmers, and having that interactive approach to the food summit. So
cool. That sounds awesome, and it's great to hear that it sounds like every year it's changed a little bit. So I'm kind of curious to see then how the conference itself and the interactions have changed based on how they changed it. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break first, and we'll get right back into it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Aloha, my name is Kirsten Baumgart Turner, and I'm the host of Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. We air live on the internet and also on Oceanic Channel 16. I'd invite you to come for a fresh new show every Tuesday from 12 to 1 o'clock. I try to bring on guests that give us a different viewpoint on aspects of sustainability in Hawaii, as well as trying to unpack some of the difficult concepts of measuring and achieving sustainability, particularly with regard to sustainable economic growth and prosperity in Hawaii. Please join us every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Mahalo, aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to an episode of Hawaii Farmer Series. I'm your co-host Justine Espiritu. This is my sidekick Matthew Johnson. Today's guest is the North Shore Community Land Trust. We have Tim T and Nick F. Thank you guys so much. I just don't want to waste any time on names. So getting right back into it, we're talking about how you guys really taken the feedback on the format of the summit and the conference, which is really cool to hear. Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of reiterate that again of, so they wanted some field trips and more interactive things. So how did that change things?
You want to take it back to the first couple of years and lead that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Each year we've had a different theme, and that theme is also, the first year was kind of established by it, but after that, each year the theme has also kind of been focused based on the kind of the feedback from the participants. So the first year was community food, community health, so it's kind of more of a health aspect, and how healthier eating can be good for the, for local community members. The second year was kind of focused on the ancestral abundance of the North Shore of Hawaii in the past, and how we could potentially, feed a lot more people again today by kind of looking back at how it was done, in the past and learning a lot from that. And then, as Nick had mentioned, this year we kind of have changed it up with the format this year, and we added the working groups this year. And this year's focus was community energy, as food and energy, and how those kind of two things intersect with each other in various ways. So that was kind of, the evolution as we've gone, and, it's been a really great experience to kind of get feedback from people, and also kind of learn a lot as we go along too, because we are by no means, experts in the local food system. We're just a land trust that, found it was really important to kind of get the local food movement kind of not jumpstart ourselves, but help kind of promote it in our own way, so that all those acres of ag land can be protected if they've got farmers on them. There's a lot less likelihood of them being developed. So.
And do you guys know of, just kind of like shifting gears slightly, but talking about like the land trust as a tool for conservation of ag land, do you have any examples, whether throughout the state or other parts of the country, where the land trust has come in and developed this flourishing agricultural community on a piece of land? Because that's a big thing that's obviously needed here in Hawaii. Do you guys have examples in other parts of the country that?
There's definitely lots of examples in other parts of the country. Certain counties, there are certain counties that are pretty much just rural in nature, and they're strictly agricultural communities, and that's what their sole focus is, their land trust is the sole focus on. And that may be buying up tracts of land to prevent development, so they stay in ag land, creating co-ops potentially on those tracts of land they didn't own. Something we definitely have been interested in pursuing. We came close a few years back to being able to purchase 200 acres of ag land up on the North Shore, but the deal just kind of didn't work out, unfortunately. But it's something we're very open and interested into. But it just hasn't worked out in our favor yet. But there's lots of ways to spin it, and there's definitely lots of examples of land trusts doing great work for agricultural related causes. So we're by no means the first. And so we're just trying to learn from the successes of other people and try to bring them here.
I'm always curious about when you have something like a land trust where there's examples all over the country. Are you kind of part of a network where you guys can kind of share lessons learned or reach out to a community that's similar? And
yeah, absolutely. There's called Land Trust Alliance.
Awesome.
So there's kind of like a hui of land trusts throughout the nation, and once a year they meet up in a big conference and kind of go over their. Everybody kind of gets together their battle stories and tells them, and also there's lots of different seminars based on, like, for instance, this past year's Land Trust Alliance had a lot of focus on agriculture related stuff and how certain land trusts have been really successful. So you can kind of go to specific seminars, just like at any conference, to kind of learn a little more about what you may specifically be interested in or what is applicable to your land trust. So yeah, there's definitely a good group of people out there.
And who gets to go to those? Is that you, or is that?
I haven't gone. We haven't gone in the past couple of years. The timing of them has always kind of been poor. We always either had like a food summit or some other big event coming up right around the same time. We just couldn't kind of pull away for the 3-day conference. So Hopefully next year I'll get to go, so it'd be nice. But I know Doug, our executive director, Doug Cole, has gone in the past, and they're really informative, and they're definitely great things to check out.
Kind of going back to the food summit a little bit, I'm curious to hear, Nick, from you talking about the last summit was focused on energy. So what were some of the conversations, or where was the conversation going in terms of food and energy? What did you pull out from it?
Well, in addition to having so much agricultural land for sale on the North Shore, and that land, we as a land trust and as an organization and a community wanting to see more of that land being used for local food production specifically, a lot of times agricultural land is also used for renewable energy projects such as solar, wind farms. We have 2 wind farms on the North Shore.
Also biofuels.
Biofuels. So just the idea behind looking at food and energy together is trying to find the optimal balance between these 2 very important issues and how we can optimize our limited lands to meet both of our very necessary goals, moving forward. So some of the issues that we covered and kind of intended to cover going into the food summit was, looking at things like biofuel production on agricultural land, solar and wind. Also the cost of energy for farmers, kind of the balance between going off-grid or locally produced food versus imported oil. And that goes into the balance with the cost of importing food versus growing our locally grown food. So any other issues that come off the top of your head, Tim?
No, I think you hit it pretty well.
Yeah.
And then just out of curiosity, who were some of the folks that you guys brought on to be on that panel?
Well, this year was a much more interactive discussion, so we only had a couple of keynote speakers.
Okay.
But within our kind of interactive conversations, we broke it down by place-space connection. So we broke the North Shore into 4 subregions and divided stakeholders by their connection to those subregions. So say if you're a resident of the Kahuku area, you'd go to that region. We did have strong participation from Sun Edison, which operates 2 wind farms and is planning a solar farm on the North Shore. They're actually our presenting sponsor of our summit, and they've sent several representatives to kind of focus more on the energy, but also the food energy connection on the North Shore.
And now that I think of it, I think when Doug was on the show, he kind of mentioned the breakout sessions by
Doug G.
Dougler. That was one of the highlights he kind of said, and they kind of came up with an idea, if I remember correctly, of, they're talking about the distribution and travel time, and something that they kind of brainstormed was, if we had some sort of central hub, maybe they came up with every 10 miles or 15 miles or something. So it sounds like bringing those folks together and just getting them to collaborate to brainstorm, sounds good, which makes me wonder, before this food summit, and being a part of the Haleiwa Farmers Market, it's obviously there's always been this lively agriculture community, but I'm not sure of any other event that I know of that really brought all the stakeholders together, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty unique event in that case, where we're really able to get not only the large stakeholders such as the landowners and the grocery store owners and the restaurant owners, but also community members to be able to all be kind of sitting at the same table and getting to discuss things. And I think a lot of good ideas and a lot of good kind of meetings happen through that, where one person on one side of the table has got a problem and the other person's got a solution, and they didn't even know each other before that day, and the next thing you know, everybody's shaking hands and solving problems. So I think that's really the most important part about the Food Summit, really, than anything else.
Now, do you guys run into any opposition with the work that you're doing? Connected with the Food Summit, but also just in terms of the land trust concept. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are really for it, but do you have, what are some of the challenges that you have? So you guys are identifying, resources that the community wants to protect. How engaging are, because then you have the people that, the groups that own this property, kind of like the pubic property, which was one of the initial pieces of land that you guys were working on. What is that like? Is it, people are always willing to sit down and, hey, let's figure this out, or what's it? Yeah,
No,
give some
definitely
background.
not. I mean, each landowner is going to be unique in what their goal, their focus is. And land is a very sensitive subject in Hawaii, especially. So we're always trying to be very careful of trying to take into account everyone's voice. But anytime you deal with that, you're going to have, it's very difficult to please everyone, obviously. But we do definitely strive to do the best we can. But when it comes to landowners, some are really receptive and really excited about, doing land conservation on their property, and even if they want to continue to own it. Some landowners have zero interest in it. So you just never know until you ask, really, is the bottom line. And we're always willing to knock on somebody's door, but and time changes things too. I mean, what one person says today, 5 years from now, the real estate markets have changed. They might be way more open to something. So it's definitely not a short-term game. It's definitely you're playing the long game in a lot of these situations. So, which is one of the struggles of the land trust, I feel, is because to try to stay relevant as a land trust in the kind of the community. Sometimes these transactions, even if they're ongoing, can take 5 to 6 years before they finalize. So there's a lot of dead air in between those 5 years, and there's not a whole lot you can update. And these things are often done behind closed doors, where you can't announce to the community every week, give an update of what's happening. So
you don't have a big parade when you sign some deal. And we did it.
So it's difficult. It's a very complicated issue that it can be difficult to communicate to the community and even to other landowners. So it's always a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. It's a really great challenge to have. So
Do you guys have the capacity to work on like more than one project at a time, or is it like you kind of tackle one thing at a time?
We have the capacity, since we have a lot of great partners. We work with Trust for Public Land, Hawaiian Island Land Trust. All the land trust organizations in Hawaii, they're all really helpful with one another. And like I said, we're a very small organization of basically 3, and I have a science background, so I don't have the real estate knowledge. So our executive director, Doug, has the law, the law background to kind of handle a lot of that stuff. But we work a lot with Trust for Public Land and Hawaiian Island Land Trust to kind of help us in our kind of legal dealings and whatnot. So we have a lot of help, and so we can do multiple projects. But we are a small organization, so we have to pick and choose our battles for sure.
Are you looking to build your organization, or is this kind of like the ideal size of your organization?
No, I definitely think we'd love to expand. We've been really fortunate this past year. We had the Turtle Bay Mackay transaction that just completed, so that was a really big victory for us. So we were able to save over 630 acres of Turtle Bay's property. We're hoping to be able to close on their Mauka land, which is their agricultural land. They've got about 460 acres, I think. I could be wrong on that number, but about 400 something acres of agricultural land just across the street from the entrance to Turtle Bay. And we've been working with them to put a conservation easement on that property as well. So we're hoping in the next couple months that should be done. So that'll be another big, success. So we do hope to expand with that and reach out and do more. And one of the reasons why I was brought on board is because my focus is doing restoration work on a lot of the properties that we have conserved. So I try to get the community together to go out to the property that we have conserved and remove invasive species and plant natives and do whatever needs to be done to kind of help restore the ecosystem of the properties that were conserved, because a lot of land's got a lot of invasives and a lot of issues. So.
Well, that's another question I had. So you say you're about to this additional land across from Turtle Bay. So if you secure that with, what's that thing you said?
The conservation easement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then you guys still have a role after that once you.
Again, each transaction is different. So with this one, we may or may not still have a very specific role. Like with some transactions we've had, we have to do a yearly monitoring of the property to ensure that they're upkeeping with the conservation easement. We may or may not, because we work with the city and the state and they're funding a lot of this. So they may decide that they want to take that role on because we're too small, because they'd rather see, they just feel better about them doing it. So that may or may not happen. I'm not really sure the details on that. But we will have some sort of a role in the sense that we work really closely with Turtle Bay. They've been a really great partner in a lot of ways to help us with this conservation easements of both the Mauka and the Mackay property. So we'll definitely be involved in some capacity. It's just each transaction kind of depends, our capacity kind of goes up and down depending on.
So with you guys getting involved with the Mackay property, that was a really big, that was in headline of Star Advertiser. It was a really big deal. Congratulations on that. I know it took a long time. But I can only imagine how much money it took, because obviously Turtle Bay, we need some kind of return for the development rights for that property. It's because it's the Cavella Bay area, right?
Cavella Bay, Kahuku Point,
Okay.
and then kind of all of the golf course area and all the marshland. So I think it's roughly 800 and something acres total of that property, and we conserved about 630 of it. So that 800 something includes the hotel and everything that's already developed now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. So yeah, it's a pretty big piece of property, and it definitely took some money.
Great.
Awesome. So great to hear kind of all the details and different things that you guys are involved with. I didn't really realize your role in all these kinds of transactions. So I'm super fascinated. We are going to take a quick break, and I'm curious to hear a little bit more about each of your background. And yeah, thanks.
Sounds good.
So we'll be right back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha! Hello, my name is Patrick Bratton. I'm host at Global Connections here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 1 p.m. We bring Hawaii to the world and the world to Hawaii, talking about international events and various things of interest to the audience. Please join me. I look forward to talking with you and having you get to meet some of my guests. Aloha.
Aloha, my name is Callie Lucas. I am the host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here every Friday on ThinkTech Hawaii at 3 p.m. I invite people who are doing interesting and inspiring things in our community to help us keep it local and keep it real. Tune in any Friday, 3 p.m., and also available on our YouTube channel and my blog, KallieLucas.com. Hawaii is my mainland. Aloha.
Aloha, and welcome to the final segment of Hawaii Farmers Series. I'm your co-host, Justine Espiritu. This is my co-host, Matthew Johnson. And today we have the North Shore Community Land Trust, kind of talking about their history in the community, the work they do in conservation, as well as the annual food summit that they have been putting on the North Shore. Thank you guys again so much for joining us.
Yeah,
so we got a lot of background, and curious to hear a little bit more about your own individual background. Let's start with you. So you're currently a student.
Yes, I'm currently a senior at University of Hawaii Manoa, double majoring in community planning, which is a major that I was able to design through the interdisciplinary studies program.
Nice.
They don't offer an undergraduate urban planning program, so I kind of put it together through kind of a create your own program. And I'm also doing a second major in Hawaiian language.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. And okay, so that obviously kind of relates to the work that you're doing with the North Shore Land Trust.
It was pretty inspired by, I actually started volunteering with and then working part-time with the Land Trust before I decided to take the plunge and make my own.
Oh, so even before you went to University of Hawaii, you were familiar with the organization, or?
No, before I decided to
actual
design
major.
my own major in
Oh, okay.
community planning, yeah.
Oh, you guys got quite the worker here. That's great.
He's a good asset.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Then I was kind of curious too of how you found kind of that role, because before I spoke with you, I hadn't heard of like a project coordinator or program coordinator with the organization. Were you just volunteering and they kind of then found a role for you, or did you
kind of,
beg
yeah.
for a couple years, or like have to find some funding, or how does that work?
There was some initiation.
There was no begging involved or hazing.
Between
We
Doug and Tim.
haven't gotten there yet.
That's not what we heard.
But I just as a college student, and a community resident, so I kind of knew Doug through neighbors and stuff, and but it wasn't really through that. I didn't know him very well. I just kind of got involved and got interested in sustainability type things and trying to give back to my home community, and started volunteering and going to meetings and things, and over time I they were able to find a position for me. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you able to use any of your work, or maybe perhaps your research or follow up on the Food Summit for school papers or projects? That's always good. When
definitely,
you can,
that's
double
definitely
dip things. Yeah.
that's definitely my main strategy in school is trying to double dip as much as possible. But just trying to be as efficient as possible. And I think it's really important, and it's been really beneficial for me to try to combine as much of my own personal passions and interests with my school and with my work and with my home. So it all kind of it's not easy. It doesn't make it. It really doesn't make it that much easier. It's almost more work when it's something you're so passionate about and something. That's,
Well, then you just kind of blur those lines of
Yeah.
like work and life, and you're willing to like spend all night doing things.
Yeah, definitely.
How about from the other way though, the classes that you're taking, how do you feel that they're benefiting you and the work you're doing at North Shore Land Trust?
I've definitely taken. I mean, I had the opportunity to choose, 12 classes that I wanted to constitute my major. And all of those classes are very relevant in different ways. Like I've been able to learn a little bit about GIS, which is a technical skill that'll help me in the
That's
future.
the actual GIS class that you're taking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's actually a class that I took about, what was it called? Community and natural resource management. But it was really navigating like the participatory process and how you engage different stakeholder groups. So I learned a lot about just the different roles of facilitation and things like that. So, I mean,
Do you plan to go onto the master's program there, or?
I'm considering options for continuing, but I'll likely stay. I'd like to stay here at Manoa, University of Hawaii Manoa, just because it makes sense with my interest here in Hawaii to stay local and to have the opportunity to stay involved with the North Shore Land Trust and North Shore Community Land Trust and other organizations.
Eventually move on and take Doug's job? Yeah.
I don't know.
We can
about
already
that.
see where this is going.
He'd be great at it.
He's like, no,
Makes-
Tim's
makes
job
fantastic.
first, then Doug's.
And then and so sorry, how long have you been on board with them?
About almost 2 years, close to 2 years. I've been volunteering for a couple years now, yeah.
Okay, so then the first food summit was without Nick, and then you kind of, were you the lead the last 2 years?
My first experience with the food summit was going to the first food summit. And then after that, I kind of started going to the meetings and kind of interjected here and there. But then this past year, the third annual food summit, I took a little bit more of a leadership role in helping to plan.
That's cool, and I'm just always really interested to hear. I think when I first got interested in agriculture, I kind of thought the only thing to do and what you have to be if you're interested in agriculture is you have to be a farmer. That's what I've been really excited about, to have people in all kinds of different roles that are, I was going to say equally important, but maybe a tier down from actually growing the food
Yeah.
is,
I'd like to learn I'd like to get more involved with growing food also, though.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're describing a good TV show. So Tim, how about you? Give us a little more background about you.
Sure. Kind of similar to Nick, I volunteered my time at the beginning. I helped out with a conservation plan for the Turtle Bay Mackay, actually, that we talked about. So about, I guess it was 4 years back or so. Nick, was that how long it was? 4 years ago? We got together those meetings and we're trying to figure out that conservation plan. Something like that, right? Yeah, about
Maybe
4 years.
you might have been involved with it longer than me.
Yeah.
I jumped in on the tail end of
Oh,
that.
okay.
That's when I first got involved.
But so,
And you were like a science, like an environmental planning company?
I was with an environmental consulting firm prior to
Okay.
that. That's what I was. That was my background for about the past 9 years prior to
Okay.
the Land Trust. And just volunteered my time with various organizations. Surfrider Foundation was one of them, the Oahu chapter, and then also just help give my time to this particular project with the Land Trust, which was the conservation easement plan, I guess, or conservation plan for. So it's kind of the plan that was put together to present to both stakeholders on both sides, both the state and the city, county, and also Turtle Bay themselves. Say, hey, this is what the community would like to see. So there was a group of community members that kind of put that together, and I was just a small part of that. And just helped where I could, and then maybe 2 years or so down the road, I got a random call from Doug, said, hey, we're looking for some help, would you be interested? And I said, I'll start tomorrow if you'd like. And so that's kind of how I got involved, but just kind of similar to Nick, just on a volunteer basis, and then just kind of worked my way through the process. And then I got brought on board, like I'd mentioned, to kind of focus on the community involvement and kind of restoration side of things, because I do have the science background. So I have a degree in environmental science and policy, which is basically a degree that gets you in trouble because you know just enough to get yourself in trouble, but you don't know a lot about anything. So I'm really interested in a lot of different kind of ecosystems, because I learned a little bit about wetlands and coastal and mountain and all the different ecosystems. And so I kind of have a little bit of knowledge about everything, but not a lot of knowledge about anything. So it's really good, because then I know when I find somebody that can help me that does have a lot of knowledge in a specific thing, whether it be through like a U.S. Fish and Wildlife person or NOAA or DLNR, and then kind of, we work together in a lot of times to kind of help with the projects, putting the projects together. So it's a lot of fun.
Give me an example of some like specific restoration practices, like for the Turtle Bay Mackay lands? Like, what are some things that you're looking at that you would want to go back and propose to do?
Sure. Well, right now we're currently doing a large restoration project on Cuckoo Point, which is part of the Turtle Bay's property. So it's kind of the Cuckoo end of it, kind of right next to Marconi Road, and we're doing a large restoration project. We've been doing it for about the past year. We got some funding through Hawaii Community Foundation, their community restoration program, and Turtle Bay Foundation themselves, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and NOAA have all been really big supporters. And we're basically, the Cuckoo Point is kind of one of the last intact coastal sand dune systems on Oahu that haven't basically been bulldozed over and built on. So it's a really good, it's kind of like another Canada Point, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So we're pulling out all the invasives and putting in natives and trying to get the seabirds to come back and colonize the area. And that's something we've been working on about the past year, and we'll be doing it again for the next couple of years. So it's a big restoration project we're working on. We also do on the Pupukea Palmalu property, we do once a month work days there as well, where we help do erosion control on the trails and make the trails a little more user-friendly for families and whatnot, so that they can be utilized by the community. So putting in simple steps along the trail for when it gets muddy and slippery, and planting natives along the trail path and stuff like that. So we're doing that as well. So we've been doing that for a few years as well. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
I mean, that's an amazing amount of impact that you guys have, and land trusts in general. I think they're pretty much not really understood by most people, but the fact that you're coming in, you got the whole lawyer business aspect coming in, whether purchasing the land or purchasing the easements. So you're coming in on that end of it, and then you have the scientific or the agriculture aspect of it, and whether it's doing conservation practices or for agriculture. I mean, it's just a huge amount of tools that you guys are being able to use with just the three of you. So what's kind of like the next steps for you guys, like looking into the future here? I know you guys, because it's a long-range planning organization, what do you guys want to see happen? What are your goals for land trusts and North Shore Land Trust in Hawaii?
Well, I think a lot of our focus, and one thing I want to mention that Nick also brings to the table that's been really great for us that he didn't mention was, because he's kind of modest, so, the importance of the cultural aspect of what we do as well. Land is, again, a very sensitive and important issue for all stakeholders. And Nick has been really great about kind of bringing in a lot of the cultural importance and sensitivity of the areas, and making sure that we're paying attention to those issues as well, because a lot of people care about the birds and the bees and saving all those, but there's a lot more to land than just the ecosystem and or how the community utilizes it. So that's really important. But Nick, you want to talk about some long range goals?
In 1 minute.
In 1 minute?
I don't know. I think we created a North Shore, well, I wasn't a part of it, but the Land Trust created a North Shore green print a few years back to kind of guide our overall strategy and looking toward the future of the North Shore. So I think our goal is really to just conserve as much land as possible for the benefit of the community. And that benefit is not only just to look at it and be pretty, but for agriculture, importantly, for culture, recreation, ecosystems. So I think we have a lot of work ahead of us to just try to conserve as much of the land as we can, and not only just put a fence around it, but actually get people on the land and participating with it and taking care of it, so that we can have that more holistic lifestyle that not only benefits North Shore residents, but everyone on Oahu and Hawaii and all of our visitors.
Yeah, well, I like the idea too of not just like having this preservation to look at something, but interacting it. Really, really quickly before we end, do you want to say the air dates for Alelo's coverage of the Food Summit?
So the Alelo's covering it in 2 parts, and the first part's already happened, I think, but the second part will be on Monday, January 11th at 7 p.m. On Alelo 54, and they will be highlighting the Food Summit, this most recent Food Summit. And you can also check out old ones on their website. You can go back and see all the coverage from the previous years as well.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah. Yay, so much information. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And we'll be right back in about 10 minutes. Thank you.